Now, I first heard about this from Pirate Nation, and they said Sony's Bend studio, which canceled a live service game earlier this year, is laying off 30% of staff today, around 40 people. The studio has been spinning up a new project following the cancellation of that live service game. So this is the logo of Bend Studio, and this is Jason Schreier over on the PDF Sky, and he says Sony's Bend Studio, which canceled a live service game earlier this year, is laying off 30% of staff today, around 40 people. Bloomberg News has learned. The studio has been spinning up a new project following the cancellation, which, knowing Sony, that new project will also most likely be canceled. Now we have it from the horse's mouth. Bend Studio on X. Today we said goodbye to some incredibly talented teammates as we transition to our next project. We're deeply thankful for their contributions as they've shaped who we are, and their impact will always be part of our story. This is a difficult moment for our team, but we hold immense respect for everyone who got us here. As we move forward, we remain committed to building the future of Bend Studio with creativity, passion, and innovation in the titles we craft. And you go into the comments here, and my goodness, everyone, because this is a studio that made Days Gone, everyone's just like, bro, just make Days Gone 2. Days Gone 2. Jobs gone. That's a good one. I'll give that a like. We just want Days Gone 2. This one really stood out to me. I gotta give this a like if I didn't already. It said, just a reminder that the studio said no to Days Gone 2. Look at the studio now. Canceled game after canceled game. And now layoffs. 6 years without a single game because they didn't want to listen to us fans who did everything to make our voices loud and clear. Shaking my head. God forbid Sony actually listen to the people buy the games saying what they actually want to purchase in the style of game. No. We need to follow the charts and graphs and tell the people what they want, not listen to what they're telling us they want. So heading over to Bend Studios website, they don't have any specific updates to the main page here. Checking out the blog, and the latest update is April for Days Gone Remastered Twitch viewer reward. It's kind of tragic to see a studio with, and I know there was a lot of, we'll say, mixed emotions about Days Gone, especially when it launched, but it seems to have gathered quite the cult following over the years to a point where people are like, just stay with Days Gone, make a new one. That's what we want. And for whatever reason, they said no. Now, if I had to guess, it would be Sony saying, oh, there's money to be made in live service because we saw EA make infinite money on Apex Legends. We saw Fortnite make infinite money. We saw all these live service games. They're just out there, just infinite money. And Sony saw that, and they're like, we want a piece of that pie. Because if we can just hit one of those, if one of our games from all of our studios can be the next Fortnite, we can sustain Sony for eternity. The problem is, and I think they didn't really understand the risk reward of what they were doing, is they turned it into a let's throw everything against the wall, throw all this money and buy all these studios and just throw everything we possibly can at the latest craze in gaming. And we're just going to invest infinite money into that because we're Sony and we can do that. And because we're Sony, it will just work because we're a big company. Instead of remembering the reason why these companies that made these games successful in the first place were and what they did was they had a special, unique idea that wasn't done before, or they did it better than it was done before. And they didn't necessarily follow the crowd. They blazed a path. And if you want to get into a blue ocean of infinite money, as Nintendo puts it, You need to blaze a new path. You can't copy what other people are doing. And I feel like that's Sony's major downfall right now. They've had countless live service games cut. They've canceled God of War live service game, Last of Us multiplayer, and Last of Us live service. Uh, Countless other live service titles. Don't forget, by the way, Concord estimated $400+ million plus the purchase cost of probably Monsters, which was later turned into Firewalk Studios. That was estimated to be somewhere between another 200 to 300 million. So we're talking around $700 million for Concord, if those estimates are accurate, to piss it all down the drain. And it's one of those situations where this is what happens when you put executives into positions at companies that are not gamers. If you don't understand what makes a game special, what makes the magic in a game, what makes it tick, like Nintendo typically does, at least they used to, you're not going to be able to garner an audience of people that care. And then you end up with mass layoffs after mass layoffs, studio closures. Don't forget, by the way, Bungie is now owned by Sony as well. And Marathon being put on the back burner on top of all of this with the plagiarism scandal. I mean, they've gotten to a point where literally whatever they do, it's the wrong move. And they step on a rake no matter what direction they go. So am I surprised to see Bend Studio having a 30% layoff today? Yes, I am. You know why? I thought it would be more. What the hell were all these people doing? 40 people. That's 30% of the staff. So quick math, that's going to put the staff at around what? 130 people or so? 140 people? 125 to 135 people, we'll say. For 6 years and 0 games to ever come out of the studio for 6 years. How much money were they just lighting on fire every single day? And imagine working at that company, going in, working on a game, and then having it canceled. I couldn't imagine that feeling. That'd be so heartbreaking. But at the same time, you got to kind of know, if you're working on a game, you get a vibe for if it's going to be something special or if it's going to just be a generic game that just comes and goes. And something tells me they kind of knew this, whatever live service game they were working on was ultra generic and it was just not going to go anywhere. And that's going to be a pretty depressing environment. So yeah, those 40 people are now added to the pile of a very growing list of seemingly tens of thousands of employees in the game industry that are out of work. And while it is tragic on the surface for anyone to lose a job, in a weird way, I almost feel like this is the unfortunate. You can't make an omelet without cracking eggs. You can't heal the game industry by keeping everyone who's ruining the game industry employed. This is just an ultimate consequence of the actions that the industry's been doing over the better part of the past, over a decade at this point. Over a decade. So yeah, best of luck to the based employees that were let go. And it's sad, but then again, it's the game industry in 2025. So who should really be that surprised at the end of the day? Float Light says fries in the bag now, if they're lucky. DSIC says mind's eye flopping. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. We'll get on that in a second. Death Star, aka Cliff Yablonsky, Step Grandson, said their salaries had to be at least $80,000, right? 40 times 80,000 equals a lot. Yeah, I'd imagine many of the salaries, especially if they're developers, probably more than that. Like we're talking 6 figures, sometimes like 150 to 200,000 a year or more, depending on the level that you're at. So it can get very expensive very quickly. And there's a lot of money being burned at Sony right now. Groofus Grim says, current Bungie naming the game Marathon is really insulting to 1994 Bungie. Yeah, it is. But, I mean, with talentless people running companies and stealing all their ideas, is anyone really that surprised? Guitar, they did the math. He said 3.2 million per year annually, compounded because of interest. That's a lot of money. We're talking 15 to 16 plus $1 million and nothing to show for it. That's crazy. That's crazy. Angmar WK says, shout out, man. You had me laughing on that hypno stream. Thank you for the laugh, man. Hey, no problem, man. No problem. Anyways, we'll leave that one there. Move on to the next one because, yeah, there's, like I said, there's a lot to talk about tonight. But that one hit, and I was just like, damn, that's pretty wild.